understand Jesus properly, we need to see that in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus was not disagreeing with the Old Testament itself. Instead, he objected to the ways that the scribes and Pharisees interpreted the Old Testament. In the days of Jesus, few people actually had direct access to the Bible. And for this reason, ordinary people in Israel relied heavily on the teachings of their religious leaders. As we will see, when Jesus set up the contrast in Matthew chapter 5 that we have just read, he contrasted his own views, which were in harmony with the Old Testament, with the traditions that the scribes and Pharisees had added to the Old Testament. A number of details prove that this was the case. First, we should notice that Jesus dealt with things that had been said and heard. In other words, he was concerned with oral traditions rather than with the Old Testament itself. When Jesus and other New Testament figures refer to the Old Testament, they spoke of what was written or read. And nowhere in the New Testament does Jesus refute anything introduced in that manner. But in the Sermon on the Mount, he objected to what had been said to the people. He objected to what they had heard. To put it simply, Jesus contrasted what the scribes and Pharisees were saying with what he was saying. Jesus was not disagreeing with what was written in the Old Testament, but with the oral traditions perpetuated by other teachers in Israel. That is why he kept referring to what was said rather than to what was written. In this light, we should look more closely at what Jesus actually said about these oral interpretations of the Old Testament. Let's think again about the contrast that Jesus drew. With respect to the issue of murder, although many people believe that Jesus expanded the prohibition of murder to include hatred, it's important to realize that the Old Testament not only condemned murder, but also condemned discord among the people of God. The Old Testament ideal of harmony and peace among God's people is expressed well in Psalm 133, verse 1. How good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. Popular traditions in Jesus' day excused discord so long as it did not lead to physical murder. In contrast, Jesus refuted this false teaching by reasserting the actual standards of the Old Testament. And he did so by associating the prohibition against murder with the prohibition against hatred. Regarding adultery, many people believe that Jesus expanded the prohibition against adultery to include adultery of the heart. But once again, it's easy to see that Jesus did not disagree with or expand the Old Testament requirements. After all, the Old Testament did not just require God's people to refrain from physical adultery, it also forbade coveting, or adultery of the heart. As we read in Exodus chapter 20, verse 17, "You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor." The 10th commandment explicitly prohibited coveting someone's wife. So we see that Jesus' argument was not a denial of Old Testament law, but a reassertion of Old Testament law. Regarding divorce, many interpreters believe that Jesus disagreed with the Old Testament once again. But we must understand that in Jesus' day, many religious leaders in Israel believed that Old Testament legislation gave them the right to divorce their wives for practically any cause, so long as they issued proper legal papers. But we all know that the Old Testament indicates clearly that God does not approve of such behavior. As Malachi chapter 2, verse 16 says, "I hate divorce, says the Lord God of Israel." In Matthew chapter 19, verses 3 through 9, Jesus described his position on divorce in more detail, and there he made it clear that his opposition to divorce was based on the Old Testament itself, particularly on the creation narrative involving Adam and Eve. Regarding oaths, many people think that Jesus objected to the Old Testament practice of taking oaths. But once again, Jesus was not opposing the Old Testament's teachings, but perversions of its teachings. Apparently, in Jesus' day, some people taught that lying was permitted so long as one did not swear to keep his word. Jesus disagreed with this teaching and insisted that the Old Testament prohibited all lying, not just lies that violate oaths. As we read in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 and 17, there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue. This is why Jesus went on to say in Matthew chapter 5, verse 37, "Simply let your yes be yes and your no, no." Jesus did not disagree with the Old Testament, but showed that the oral traditions of the scribes and Pharisees fell short of Old Testament standards. Regarding revenge, many people believe that the Old Testament approved revenge and that Jesus disapproved of it. But originally, the Old Testament legislation about an eye for an eye in Exodus chapter 21, verse 24, was designed to guide judges in the official courts of Israel. In a word, judges were to render their verdicts and punishments fairly and proportionally to the crimes committed. This standard was never intended to apply to interpersonal affairs. Instead, the Old Testament taught that kindness and mercy were to guide behavior in those settings. As we read in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, "Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people. I am the Lord." In Jesus' day, an eye for an eye had been taken as God's approval of personal revenge. It was believed that every time anyone did anything to you, you had a right to do something equally harmful back to him. But Jesus disagreed with this perversion of the law and affirmed the Old Testament teaching that we are to show kindness in interpersonal relationships. Finally, regarding love for enemies, many people wrongly believe that the Old Testament taught it was acceptable to hate enemies. Some teachers in Jesus' day apparently inferred from the commandment of Leviticus 19:18 to love your neighbor that it was equally appropriate to hate your enemies. But of course, the Old Testament never says anything of the sort. In fact, in Exodus chapter 23, verse 4, we read these instructions about how to treat enemies. "If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to take it back to him." So, once again, Jesus did not contrast his own views with those of the Old Testament. Instead, he opposed the false interpretations of his day and reasserted the true teachings of the Old Testament. We seriously misunderstand Jesus' teaching if we imagine that he taught anything against the Old Testament itself. Now, as we will see, Jesus often revealed where the Old Testament had been heading, and he explained the beliefs and practices it had anticipated. And in this sense, his teachings went well beyond the teaching of the Old Testament, revealing more of the character of God and his will to his people. But Jesus never opposed the Old Testament or its teachings. On the contrary, he opposed false interpretations